Welcome to this edition of Talk to Me with David Ward, and joining me this week is Canadian guitar legend of Loverboy and Streetheart and numerous other bands, Paul Dean. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
14 other bands, to be exact, or to be approximate.
Welcome, Paul. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
All right, David. Good to be here.
So you have quite the history. As you said, 14 bands. You know, I knew something about you, and I did a little bit of reading, but there was a lot more after I went online and read about you. I hadn't realized how much stuff you had actually been up to before Loverboy started. So can you give me a little background, kind of where you grew up and kind of getting into music?
I grew up in the mountains of British Columbia. Somewhere between Golden and Cranbrook, two very small towns. And I was in an even smaller town of Invermere. And I moved there when I was 8. Lived there for 10 years, so I graduated grade 12 in Invermere and hit the road. First opportunity I had, the bell rang, I was gone. I was into Vancouver. And so I've been living everywhere across Canada, but mainly in Vancouver. And growing up there, I got into surf music. That's kind of what I don't know how I got into it. Somebody must have had a record and they turned me onto it. But so that's how I cut my teeth as a guitar player. That and country music, a little bit of Johnny Cash and his guitar player, Luther Perkins, and Dwayne Eddy was a big influence on me back. We're talking in the very beginning. I learned all his stuff. All the Ventures songs and all this, and then all the surf bands and the Beach Boys. And then I got into the Everly Brothers, which was a big thing for me because all of a sudden I was into vocals and singing and that. And that's where I kind of got immersed in the two-part harmony of that became what I consider one of Loverboy's signatures in the two-part harmony between Mike and myself. And kind of based on the Everly Brothers because they were two-part as well, and so it was a huge influence on me. And the difference being that it was really hard for me back in the day trying to decipher what the harmony parts were because they were so tight, and it was like one voice, and it was like, okay, there's the melody, but where's the harmony? So that was an interesting, as a 14-year-old kid trying to figure it all out, figure out guitars and harmonies, and then I eventually got into songwriting after that.
What were the gigs like? Was it like you had to do covers like all night? Or
it was all covers, and it was all really old. I mean, we're talking 50s, 50s music, because it was in 60, 62, 63, something like that. This is before the Beatles came out. I was playing guitar and or right around the time the Beatles came out, but yeah, we were doing all covers. There was no original stuff, and I was a hired gun in the band, and just as I say, a pretty young beginner. Mm-hmm. I had a pretty good groove, and I could figure out the tune. I could figure out a song by ear, but I wasn't featured by any stretch. But it was an instrumental band. It was an interesting time for me. The guitar player also he played trumpet, so we did a couple of tunes together, trumpet and sax, and there was an accordion player in the band. It was pretty earthy stuff, but it was a good way to cut your teeth. And I learned the business too. I mean, I was making $10 a night, and we did a gig on New Year's, and from what I heard, the guy got $200 for the show for New Year's. Yeah. And I go, well, what do you think? Could I maybe get 12? He says, no, you make $10. I went, you know what? Screw you, buddy. And I went on and started my own band after that. So that was my first bit of business in the music business, my first bad taste, I guess you could say.
And I've talked to quite a few other artists recently, and certainly got a bit of shtick and stories about sort of the Ontario circuit and parts about the Canadian circuit. And so what was it like in the West Coast and wherever you were playing, sort of when you first started getting into rock and touring a bit?
Well, I moved to Vancouver in 62, 64, I guess, something like that. Yeah, 64, 65. And I got, like the first week I was there, I ran into an old friend of mine who was in a rhythm and blues band, instrumental band once again, and their guitar player had just quit, and he was looking for a guitar player. So I signed on, and so all of a sudden I went from being a surf dude to a rhythm and blues dude, and I went, what the hell is rhythm and blues? I had no idea what R&B meant, what the approach that a guitar player would take. So it took me a while to figure that, to kind of to analyze that and to figure out where I fit. And I had to adapt, and I had to learn a new style. I've always kept my surf style. I still have that embedded in me really deeply. It keeps coming out in my solos. And but the R&B thing was a really great school to attend. I was going to UBC and learning all this, the Sam and Dave stuff, all the Motown stuff, and the Stax stuff, and Wilson Pickett, and all these James Brown, and all these guys, and a lot of Seattle instrumental bands, and we learned some songs by the Sonics and from Seattle, and I had a brush with the Seattle band joining the Hurricanes back when I was playing surf music, and they were once again an instrumental band, but they had a killer guitar player and a really cool kind of keyboard sound with a sax player. We had a very similar thing. The band was called the Chantels, and I joined that band. And our circuit was, we played a lot of frat parties. You just get stinking drunk. You play the set, and your show, you get stinking drunk, pass out, and in the hallway somewhere. When you're 19 or 20, I guess that's what you do. Well, what I did anyhow, so that was a really fun thing. Nobody's making any money, but we were playing. We're making $15 a night or whatever. But we were happy to be playing. As I am now, I'm still so happy to be playing.
And can you explain a little bit, sort of how you ended up in then back in the middle, then back in Winnipeg and Street Hard?
Well, I was in Street Hard. Street Hard was it would have been my 13th band, I guess. And I was in a band with Matt. I had been, previous to meeting Matt, I was in another band, a Canadian recording band, doing all original stuff. And that band broke up, and I was pretty destitute. I didn't know, I couldn't find anything in Toronto where I was living. And I phoned an agent in Calgary, and he said, well, this band, Great Canadian River, in Edmonton, are looking for a guitar player. And I said, well, great. And I think I got them maybe to pay my way out so I could audition. I auditioned them the same time they were auditioning me. And I liked their music was interesting because they played some Steely Dan and Stevie Wonder and Paul McCartney, stuff that I would never dream of playing. And it was a good thing for me. Not so much the music that we're playing. I could kind of, that didn't make a lasting impression on me. But I met Matt Burnett. He was the drummer in the band, and that's the reason I wanted to join the band. He did a drum solo the night I saw him. I went, wow, this guy he's great. He's really cool. Great player. But then when I played with him, he had a great groove. It was a very natural thing for me to play with him. He felt the music where I felt it. Mm-hmm. Where I played with a lot of drummers who have been so far on top of the beat. It's like a nervous energy that I just can't get into. And some drummers are so far behind the beat, it's lazy, and I fall asleep. So that was right on target for me, right in my groove. So I joined that band, and we were together for a couple of years, or something like that, a year and a bit, I guess. And then Matt and I went to this bar together to hear this up and coming band. They were called Witness, and we were blown away. We looked at it and said, this is what we should be doing. They were doing covers. They weren't doing original stuff, but they were doing covers. But they had this amazing bass player, Ken Sneed, who's currently our Loverboy bass player, and a couple other guys that were really, truly amazing. Singer Kenny Shields and Daryl Guttal, keyboard player. So Matt and I, we were, oh man, if only we could be in a band like this. So we were like blown away. And I guess, unbeknownst to us, that band came and saw our band Matt's in my band, and they even said the same thing. They said, wow, if we could only get those guys in our band. So one morning I swear it was 5 a.m., Kenny Shields phoned me up from Regina, and he said, his first words were, hey, man, you want to make a band? And I went, yes. There was just no question. So I think probably a week or two later, we gave our notice to the band we were in, and we hightailed it out to Regina, the two of us. And we got an apartment together, and I was sleeping on the floor and whatever. You know, it was right at the bottom of how you start a band. You know, you get a band out, you share everything, and then we rehearsed that for probably 6 months, and we wrote a ton of stuff, ton of songs, and we were ready to go. We had an album with the stuff, and we split Regina and headed straight for Toronto and started playing around Toronto, the Toronto area, and playing all the clubs and just kick some serious butt in Ontario. And out of that, we got a record deal, and we recorded Meanwhile Back in Paris together. That was the only record that Streetheart did with me. I was asked to leave shortly after that due to some political BS that was going on, you know. Mm-hmm. And I was that's when I shortly after that I started doing a solo album. I said, you know, to myself, I said, hell with trying to back up a singer, because I've been backing up singers forever and trying to write music for them and supporting them and putting my heart and soul into the band and supporting them, only to have them go whatever, you know, it's not working out because of this or that. Mm-hmm. So I said, you know what, I'm just, for better or for worse, I'm going to just do it solo now. I'm tired of doing that. And then, well, in the midst of that, I heard Mike Reno. He came down to hang out with a guitar player that I was playing with. I was playing bass in his band at the same time working on my solo stuff. And Mike came down to visit this guy, and I heard Mike singing in the other room in our rehearsal hall. I went, wow. I just, the instant, I went, wow. And the whole thought of a solo career, I just went, you know what, this could probably get the solo career. If possible, I should give this one more try. See if this guy's into it, see if he's interested, see if we can make it something work. And as it turned out, it worked quite well.
Yeah, yes, it did indeed. And when you had put the band together, you guys are rehearsing, you're getting that first record together. Was there a feeling and understanding that you had something special there?
You mean with Loverboy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, it was before we put the record out. We were playing clubs, and it started out kind of shaky the first week. Wasn't great. And then, well, actually, our first show, we opened for Kiss, and that was interesting at the Coliseum, or some big room in Vancouver. And so that was an auspicious beginning to the band. But then we went to the clubs, and we played all original tunes, no covers, just like we do now. Yeah. And but people got into it. They you know, at first it was like, oh, DC, you know, they're throwing shit at us like. You know, rat tail combs and ice cubes and quarters and stick containers and stuff like that. And we'd be ducking all this paraphernalia flying at us. And then eventually things kind of calmed down, and they started getting it. They started the fans started to become fans. Instead of our enemies, they became our friends, you know. And pretty soon we started getting encores and all that, and people really got the message, you know. And so by that time, we kind of knew. You know, it's funny. I did a survey. Of 20 of our fans one night in a bar. We had 20 original tunes that we were doing, and I put them all on a list. And I said, "Do me a favor. We're going to play all these tunes tonight. Here's the set, and just give me your favorites, the ones that you thought were really good." And so I compiled that survey and went, "Okay, well then this is probably going to be the album right there." And that's how it turned out. So we recorded those 9 songs and released them. And luckily for us, we had Kid Asada and Turn Me Loose on it. And both those tunes hit big time. It was amazing.
Well, how did it begin? Like, how did you guys get a record deal? You know, as you said, you know, you told me your first gig was with Kiss.
It was opening for Kiss, and I suspect that maybe the band that was scheduled to open for them, maybe they couldn't get into the country or something, but our manager at the time, Bruce Allen, who has got his fist on the pulse of the Vancouver music scene, he made it happen for us. He, through his agency and all his connections and that. So what a great way to break a band. But so we were doing all original tunes, and then from that we were instantly established as a band. For better or for worse, we were a band. So we were able to get gigs, and we worked solid after that. We never stopped. We worked every week. We never had a week off until we went in the studio to record our first album.
Wow, that's a really, really cool story.
Yeah.
I had no idea that you had already, opened and played and had some notoriety before the record. I mean, I guess obviously often that is how it happens.
Well, yeah. I mean, then the tough thing, of course, is your what they call their sophomore record, your second record, because what happens, you have all this time to rehearse and write the first album, and then you go out and you go on the road, and okay, now it's time to do a second album. What do you got? Well, a lot of bands, they go, well, we don't really have anything, because we put all our stuff, all our eggs into this first album release, this first basket, and but with us, we worked really hard. We were rehearsing and writing on the road, and in hotel rooms and backstage in the dressing room, and after sound checks and during sound checks and after the gig, and going out and jamming and just trying different stuff. And so we were able to get a second album together. We wrote one, two. Doug and I wrote "Watch Out" in a car driving to a gig, just singing into a ghetto blaster. Actually, just right then and there. And a lot of times there was one tune, the Lucky Ones. I wrote the intro to it and the chord progression for the guitar solo, and I couldn't, because I don't write music. I went to Doug afterwards. I says, remember that part that I was playing? He says, not really. I said, remember I went and the part, and he went, yeah, okay. He says, could you write that out for me so that I have a record of it? Just because I didn't have my blaster with me, my recording device with me, it was back at the hotel. So he wrote that out for me on a napkin, so at least I go, okay, so I won't forget it. Now I know the intro to Lucky Ones. Thank you. And then we just worked on it in the dressing room and came up with most of the lyrics in the dressing room. And never played it on stage, because by that time we were warming up for Kansas and CC Top and bands like that. So we weren't going to play our new stuff. It wasn't really ready anyways. So we went in and recorded our second album, and we literally recorded it in 3 weeks. And we recorded and mixed it in 3 weeks in Vancouver, because we had a tour ready to go, and we were going to be going out with Journey shortly afterwards. So we cobbled together this Get Lucky album in 3 weeks, and in the midst of recording it, our managers would come in and say, "This is what the record company sent us, this album cover. What do you guys think?" And there's this. It looks like a guy's butt with his fingers crossed behind him in red leather pants. And he went, "Perfect. That's us right there. What are we going to call it?" And then Reno, we were singing "Lucky Ones," a tune that I wrote in the club with Doug's help, as he was my stenographer, I suppose. And he said one of the throwaway line. He says, "Get lucky" in the middle of the tune, and we just sort of went. Somebody, maybe it was Mike or maybe it was one of our managers, said, "What about Get Lucky?" And I went, "Yeah, perfect." So that's how that album came about. Pretty fast, like boom, and then we're back on the road again.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys just kept having a good run after a good run. I mean, the hits kept coming. There's not a lot of Canadian bands that can say the same story. Actually, you had songs that were used in soundtracks. You were the mainstream. You had hits in the U.S. Was there any point where life on the road started to just weigh? I mean, obviously that happens to everybody, but when you think back to it, how long was it before you started to get tired from some of it? Sometimes. Well,
adrenaline is a wonderful thing, and we were, it was 40 years ago, so we were all a lot younger, so we had a ton of energy. There was some drama. There still is. There's always drama in a band. 5 guys high maintenance dudes, you know, that we all are.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of, not a lot, but there's enough of that, and there's always cropping up, and you just got to go just navigate through it the best you can, you know. But as for the fatigue, we were all wearing cowboy boots, and I don't know, that's just where we were at. We were all wearing cowboy boots. At least Mike and I were, and I think Scott was too. And I remember after the end of the Get Lucky tour, I could barely walk. It's kind of, it catches up to you. The next, when you're finally off tour, the tour's over, and then you're going to go and record it or rewrite a new album, and you're going to take a breath, and you kind of go, holy crap, I'm pretty wasted here. It just sort of comes crashing down on you, and you realize, you know. So it was took a little while to kind of, you know, for one thing, I never wore cowboy boots again, but
Tell me about the music you've just recently released and what you're up to these days.
Well, I'm releasing a few songs. I have an album's worth of stuff. Some of them are complete. Some of them are really close to being complete. And because there's no rush, I can listen to a song and I can tear it apart and go, what if I tried this? You know, because there's no, I don't have a record company breathing down my neck going, hey, you guys got to get back on the road. We need that Loverboy album right tomorrow. We don't have that issue right now. So I'm working on a solo thing, and I've released 2 singles. I released one way back, quite a few months back, called "Be With You," and did a video for it on YouTube. And recently released another one called "Hell Yeah," with the help of 10 Canadian bands who contributed. 8 of them contributed little video snippets of different places in Canada. The theme of the song "Hell Yeah," it's kind of like a travelogue of a band going across Canada, starting on Vancouver Island, ending in Newfoundland, and all the stops in between. And most of those stops are featured another Canadian band who contributed, who I went to them and said, would you guys be into doing this? And everybody went, yeah. So some of them made most of them made it very professional with their camera crew and big expensive gear and sent in 10-second snippets of them doing what I asked or something similar, or just being in the city and doing what they wanted, you know. And pretty cool of those guys to do it.
Paul Dean, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and we should do it again sometime.